We will establish Islamic rule from Alaska and Chile to South Africa, Japan, Russia to Solomon Islands, and all the way to Iceland. Be warned, we are coming.
We did not want to imagine that this part of the East African region 100% gets into the hands of the terrorists, because that would be a disaster for the whole region and the continent.
When you looked at how the people were suffering, it was so painful. Nothing to eat, nowhere to sleep, always running, always dying. That is what motivated us, saying, no, this has to stop. This must stop.
The decision was taken by African Union to deploy a force to pacify Somalia, and the different countries promised to send a force, and Uganda took the lead.
This was a very important mission because it affects our African brothers. Somalis are our African brothers and sisters. So when in your neighborhood you have a problem, you extend a helping hand.
Within East Africa, I think Somalia is considered the kind of demented child. It's the perpetual headache, it's the country run by, occupied by thieves, bandits, anarchists. It's the country it's the kind of bastard child really of this whole region. And I think that's unfair. I mean, Somalia is as much a victim of its history as it is of its own culture and its people. We saw a country in the late 80s, early 90s already starting to tear apart at the seams because of what the global powers were trying to do to it, because of the way that they were playing out the Cold War in that region. A country that was already distorted by a military dictatorship, that was flooded with weapons, where we saw a proxy war taking place. Since then, of course, it's been the war on terror.
In 2007, after almost 20 years of civil war, al-Shabaab, an al-Qaeda-linked Islamist group, controls most parts of central and southern Somalia.
La situation en Somalie était une situation catastrophique. C'était une situation en fait qui n'avait pas de définition.
As al-Shabaab gains control of large swathes of Somalia, it brings with it a hardline brand of Islam.
The situation was so precarious and tense. There was no government to talk of by that time. Therefore, when the situation worsened, then the AU thought it was time to come in and curb the terrorist acts.
When you looked at how the people were suffering, it was so painful, especially the women, the elderly. This is where you would see a problem. You said, why this suffering? Why this suffering? It was because it was very, very, very bad. You look at the children, nothing to eat, nowhere to sleep, always running, always dying. Said, no, this type of situation must stop. And nobody can stop it except us.
The African Union Mission to Somalia, or AMISOM, is originally mandated to protect the transitional federal government, a government only in name, in an increasingly violent and volatile nation.
It was on the 6th of March 2007. That's when we landed in Mogadishu. And as we landed, some few minutes after the welcoming ceremony, very few minutes, mortars started landing on us. But thank God, nobody was injured. And we continued. Honestly, I felt it was a very challenging mission that had been given. Having known the history of Somalia, a country which has been stateless for a number of decades, and of course, what other forces went through when they were in Somalia. So I felt it was not an easy mission, but I had to prepare for it, because it had to be done. That was all.
Back in 2007, they only controlled a tiny wedge of territory, backed up by the sea on one side and Shabaab forces on the other. And Shabaab controlled pretty much 2/3 of the city, and it looked as though Shabaab would drive the African Union and the Somali government, such as it was, back into the sea very, very quickly.
The second day, one of our aircraft was shot. So you could see that the security around the airport was not good.
We had little men on the ground, little equipment on the ground. Logistic support was low. And when the plane was hit, it was like this mission impossible. It's like this mission impossible.
When the Burundians came, it was a great relief for us, because initially it was almost a Ugandan mission. It was an African mission. So now when we saw the Burundians, said, yes, now at least we have a partner, we have colleagues, we have brothers with us here.
Burundi also has been in a civil war since 1993. Burundi has seen how other countries have helped her to recover the security in Burundi. So to respond for that, Burundi decided to go and help other African countries, especially to intervene in Somalia.
When we managed to stay there for 1 year and saw another contingent coming, because the most important thing is us. Can we manage? Are we able to stay for at least 1 month? We saw 1 month going out. We saw 3. We saw I said, yeah, we are done. This is what we wanted. This is what we wanted. The foundation has been laid. Somalia will be liberated.
But liberation is still a long way off as al-Shabaab continues to tighten its grip on Somalia.
Les Shabaab étaient extrêmement puissants et avaient décidé de renverser le gouvernement de transition. Et donc, la mission première de la mission était d'empêcher ce gouvernement de tomber.
By early 2008, AMISOM is still confined to a relatively small area of Mogadishu.
So what did I have? A challenge. What challenge did I have? To protect the government. Because if the government collapsed, that means the whole mission was dead. Remember that we are supposed to be defensive, and therefore we could not move offensive. No, we had always been defensive, until I think around June, when al-Shabaab had literally cut off presidential palace to the airport, presidential palace to the seaport. That to us was the last straw. When my troops are under imminent threats, I was authorized to take some offensive actions, and that's exactly what I did. So that operations in May proved to the Somalis that AMISOM can do some work, and also sent a message to the al-Shabaab that AMISOM is a force reckoned with.
So this is your authority here.
As a new general arrives in Mogadishu, 2 years after AMISOM first landed, al-Shabaab remains unchallenged by a force shackled by a strictly defensive mandate.
When I arrived in Somalia was in July 2009. By then, the al-Shabaab had launched an operation in May, the first of its kind against AMISOM. And we were now ready or preparing to go in a situation of confrontation.
Al-Shabaab had entrenched themselves so much into the city, so much in the city, that they're occupying every household, they're occupying every rooftop. They had sniper guns on roof of tops of buildings. You could not sit in that state house in Mogadishu. You can't, because you'll be shot at. So every time people are in the bunkers, they're down, including the president. The president came and asked me, take me away from here. And it was so touching when the president came to me and said, Paul, take me away from here.
It was quite a challenging period. First of all, the TFG was marking the end of its tenure, and there was pressure that elections had to take place. But the environment was very hostile. We were not able to conduct elections when we were pitted against al-Shabaab in hardly a kilometer.
Faced with the impossibility of holding free elections in a war zone, AMISOM is authorized as part of the Kampala Accord to conduct offensive operations against al-Shabaab for the first time. They are given 1 year to secure the city.
And this was the first of its kind to have direct confrontation between AMISOM and the extremist forces al-Shabaab.
The strength of Shabaab in Mogadishu that time, we estimated them between 4,000 to 5,000. But remember, these were the majority of them fighting on their own ground. But here you are, you have a force, Ugandan and Burundian force that time, that were completely new to that kind of environment.
The al-Shabaab strength relies on hiding in those built-up areas. We studied the nature of operations, and we started taking building by building, building by building. Every building was an operation of its own. We used to call it creeping operation.
Et même quand avec la prise de certaines positions stratégiques, comme le marché de Bakara, le ministère de la Défense qui était occupé par al-Shabaab, et pour voir réellement la vaillance de nos soldats. Le combat urbain, c'est un combat réellement particulier.
It really was a classic urban battle. They had punched holes in neighbouring houses, in walls, to try and get to front line. So you'd sort of scurry through a wall that separated two homes. You'd go through a hole in someone's bedroom, then they'd go through another hole into the bathroom, and then you'd scurry through over some rubble, past some bulletproof barriers into the next door house, and so there was this little rat run. There were points where you could see al-Shabaab positions no more than 50 or 60 yards away. It was incredibly close quarter fighting.
It's a difficult job because you are, just as you know any other city, you have buildings, some are tall, some are short, and it requires a lot of manpower. and you have to be adaptive if you must make a difference in terms of winning the war. And you end up taking building per building, street by street, with all the challenges, including heavy casualties.
It is very sad to lose even one single soul. It's very sad, because our coming there was to make sure we preserve that life.
Remember that the kind of incidents that drove the Americans, the Pakistanis, the Bangladeshis, the British out in previous UN missions, the Ugandans and Burundians suffered many times over, and yet they barely flinched. The fact is that the African Union troops were prepared to stay the course, they were prepared to fight hard, but they were also prepared to learn lessons.
So yes, there were dark moments, no doubt about it. You visit the hospital, you find 10 of your people injured, you lose 1 or 2 or even more. Yeah, but then again, you are motivated by the fact that you must make Somalia safe, for Somalis first of all, but for the rest of the region and the stability of the continent and the world.
After a grueling year-long campaign, AMISOM soldiers, alongside the TFG army, eventually pushed al-Shabaab out of many of Mogadishu's districts, until on the 6th of August 2011, it finally retreats.
Everybody was doubting whether that could be possible. Even the Somalis could not believe that we could liberate Mogadishu. The international community was also not believing that that was possible.
When we finally liberated Mogadishu and we got out of the built-up areas, that was very critical for me, because this reduced on the casualties and we started to use our firepower to its full capacity.
Piga hapo kusoto. Chini ya
Of course, it created more momentum to me as a commander and the force I commanded to even liberate more areas.
As AMISOM advances into regions beyond Mogadishu, its numbers are bolstered by the arrival of troops from Djibouti and Kenya. As AMISOM pushes into new areas, it encounters a